Hello, welcome to Miss Peepers Reading Corner. I'm Katrina, aka Miss Peepers. Let's talk about books. Today I'd like to discuss Second Chance by Jane Green. And if it seems that I'm holding this book awkwardly, it's because I am trying not to let the glare from the light hit the very shiny cover. Second Chance by Jane Green. You may have seen my earlier video where I opened this in one of my mysterious book packages from the used bookstore. So I knew nothing about this book when I picked it up, and I was pleasantly surprised. So let's talk about it. This book follows a group of friends who have known each other since school, and now as adults, having drifted apart, living their own lives. One of their number has been killed in a train accident, and the other four come together to mourn, to go to the funeral, and decide then that they wish to get involved in each other's lives again, and rekindle those connections. I would consider this something of a slice of life sort of novel. It's more character driven than plot driven, although there certainly are plot points in it. And I was not sure what I was walking into when I got this book. Judging by the cover, I initially thought it was a romance novel, not a modern romance novel, which have the cartoony covers, but this one's from the 90s, so it's a little bit, but it's very clearly marketed towards women. There's no question about that. This book, they want women to pick this book up, which is fine. There's nothing obviously inherently wrong with a book that is marketed towards women. But one thing that I do want to talk about gender a little bit when we're looking at marketing. I get most of my book recommendations from either from BookTube or I just pick up something that looks interesting at the used bookstore or in the tiny library. And I get book recommendations from seeing a character read a book on a TV show, or just hearing someone mention it in passing that they liked it. So I get book recommendations all over the place. A lot of actually the recommendations I get are when I'm watching something and then see in the opening credits that it is an adaptation. So all of that is to say that while I'm certainly not immune to marketing, because none of us is immune to marketing, I don't see as much of that direct from the publisher marketing of books as perhaps others do. I'm not on TikTok or Instagram, or really YouTube is the only social media where I do much of anything. But so I don't see a lot of that direct to consume, from publisher to consumer marketing for books. And so I did a very, very little bit of just to get an understanding of what constitutes chick lit, because that is what this is marketed as. And I learned some interesting things. First of all, something I already knew from one of my favorite authors with a similar name, John Green, no relation to my knowledge. Genre is a marketing concept. So when you say that a book is science fiction, or say that a book is chick lit or horror or drama or whatever, that is a marketing decision to place the book in a category. And that is because the human brain likes to take shortcuts to make decisions. And whether you realize you're doing this or not, you are. Everyone is. That's where unconscious bias comes from. It's a whole thing. And from an evolutionary perspective, this is not going to be a psych lecture, but from an evolutionary perspective, it makes sense. You need to make quick decisions. Is this creature coming towards me a threat or not? Is this food item that I'm pulling off of a tree, is this berry going to be poisonous or not? But of course, those things still stick with us. Is this book going to be good or not? Should I spend my money on it or not? We make these quick decisions. And one of the ways that we do that for books, and also for movies and TV shows and music, is through genre. So if you put a book in just sort of a general fiction section with no categorization, it will not do as well as if you put it in young adult, chick lit, classics, wherever. Just fascinating, because fiction is such a broad category. This book is marketed as chick lit. And I think there are aspects of what is traditionally considered chick lit that apply to this book. The characters are fairly well off, or at least well off enough not to have to worry about money day to day. The races of the characters are not specified, but based on how they interact with the world and how the world interacts with them, I'm making an assumption that they're white. That could be wrong. That may not be the author's intent, but that's where I'm coming from. That's my assumption. There definitely are romance elements to the story. But where I think Jane Green does something a little bit different is that she doesn't take these storylines in obvious ways. And so I was very pleasantly surprised by this. I didn't know where it was going when I started it. I did not know whether I would like it or not, to be perfectly frank. But let me tell you a little bit about the different characters. There are 4 main characters in this book: Holly, Olivia, Saffron, and Paul. Holly is married. She's got children. And her husband is a very successful lawyer. When she's reconnecting with her friend group and also with her deceased friend, Tom is the man who dies at the beginning, Tom's brother, she starts to rethink whether her life is what she wants, and starts examining, first in sort of a tangential way and then in a more direct way, she starts examining what choices she has made and what choices she has allowed to be made for her by her husband or by society, and whether those choices have actually led her to the life that she wants. It's not a spoiler to say that she comes to the conclusion that no, this is not the life that she wants, and then she needs to decide what to do about it. One thing that I liked about this is that while she does have an emotional affair with Tom's brother, I'll let you know that, while she does have an emotional affair, she does not actually take that to a physical level while she is still in her relationship, and that she resolves her marriage first, which I can really respect, because I think she could very easily have crossed that line and had that storyline presented as, well, of course she's going to cheat on this guy and there's nothing wrong with it because her husband doesn't care about her. That's not really the point. She's in this relationship, she should resolve it before she moves on to someone else. Whether or not her husband deserves it, it's the right thing to do. I have strong feelings on this, I'll just say. But I like that the story took that direction. Saffron is an actress, and so she has moved. This book takes place in the UK. She has moved to the United States, and she is fairly well known at this point, at the point of the novel, and she has started a clandestine relationship with another actor who is married. And so this is an affair. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the affair is justified in any way, though I will point out that her boyfriend's marriage is one of convenience for the sake of his and his wife's acting careers, and not actually born out of any kind of love. And so she's in this spot of being yet another one of his mistresses, but she truly believes that he loves her and will eventually leave his wife for her. That story doesn't go in quite the direction that one would expect either. Saffron is also dealing with alcohol abuse, and so that is a content warning for this book, is alcoholism and substance abuse. She's already been struggling when she finds out that her friend has died, and now she's finding a place where she can be herself, or finding people with whom she can actually be herself, because they are not the superficial Hollywood people who are not actually friends but are expecting her to behave a certain way. Olivia is single, has been single, has never been married, and hasn't really thought much about being in a romantic relationship, except when people try to set her up with dates. And her storyline is the one that I think most bucks the trend of chick lit, in that she does not end up happily married at the end of the book, which is not to say that she'll never get married in the universe of this story, but the fact that her end goal is not a relationship despite her character starting it without a relationship, I think is really huge. I think a lot of chick lit, and I think about the books, but also things like the Hallmark movies, where you've got this woman who cares about her career. In this case, Olivia runs an animal shelter. Um, the concept of this woman being super career focused and doesn't have time for a man until she realizes that a man is all she needed, like that is not Olivia's storyline. And I really love that. And she does have romantic interactions, certainly throughout the story. And but that's not like her defining characteristic. I don't want to spoil how that ends up, but I will say that she does not end up with a man at the end. And I kind of like that because it's right for her. She's not despondent for being single. She is building the life that she actually wants. Our fourth character is Paul. So the only male character, the male main character in this book. And he is married to a beautiful woman. They are very successful. They have money. They have everything that they could possibly want, great careers, except they can't conceive a child and they really, really want to have children. This is an interesting storyline as well because a couple stays connected to one another throughout this. And I know that infertility, which is another content warning, infertility can certainly be so trying emotionally as well as physically on both halves of a couple, and not being able to and not being able to do this one thing that they really, really want, and that they are in such a good financial situation. They would be loving parents. It's the whole story of why can't I have a child myself? And they discuss adoption, but it's not really what they want. And that storyline also, it does not go in the direction. They don't end up miraculously conceiving in the 11th hour, which I think is something that would happen in a lot of chick lit type books. So I really liked the storylines of this and just the way that the stories did not they did not follow this train track, if you will, towards traditional happiness, traditional happy endings for everybody. Nothing about it felt fairy tale. Things do close out kind of neatly at the end, but not necessarily in the way you would expect. And the book itself is well written. Like, Jane Green is a talented writer. She's a talented storyteller. It's, as I said at the beginning, this book is character driven and the characters are full real people. And so you find yourself, or at least I found myself, caring about them and wanting to get to know them better. And I was able to get to know them better throughout the story. I think it's a beautiful story that these adults have found each other after so many years and come together again and reform their friend group. That's a story I don't see very much. I also don't read a lot of books that are traditionally considered chick lit, so maybe I'm just missing it. But I feel like that's a story I don't see a whole lot of. People coming together, having changed. That's a big thing. Like, they are all different people than they were when they were children, but they are able to rekindle those relationships, rebuild those relationships, and not just pick up where they left off on the schoolyard, but actually develop full friendships as adults. And I really love how they did that, how Jane Green did that. I mentioned some content warnings, but I'll just go through a list real quick. There is infidelity, there's substance abuse / alcoholism, there is infertility, and then of course the death of a character before the book starts. And ultimately, this is a story about grief. There's a lot of discussion of having someone leave your life forever. Tom's parents are minor characters, but they are present in that, how they grieve, how his brother grieves, and also how these four friends are feeling the absence of this man who ultimately kept them connected, at least to him, if not fully to each other. So they think about those times that they would have called him to tell him news or ask for his advice or just to say hi and see how things are going. He had a wife as well, and he had a child. And so it's a very, so there's definitely a lot of discussion about grief in this story as well. But ultimately, It's a story about people. Now, this is not going to be for everybody. I know that right now. I'm not going to pretend that this is a universal story, but I do think that calling it chick lit or marketing it just towards women, I think does it a disservice. The term chick lit suggests something that's less serious or less real. There's no like guy lit, right? Like there's no real male equivalent. I think for a time I was reading for a time people were throwing around this term lad lit, but it never stuck. Because if this were written by, say, Anthony Trollope, it would just be a classic, right? Or even written by someone like, if Jane Green had lived, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, it would be considered a classic versus chick lit now. And it's just really unfortunate that a label like that makes someone, I include myself in that. When I saw chick lit, I was like, ooh, I don't think I want to read that. And I had to examine that about myself and what assumptions I was drawing. And like I said, I did a little bit of reading online to see what that connotation, whether my mental connotation aligned with the intent of that label, which it kind of does. And that's unfortunate because I'm probably missing out on books. So what I would say is, first of all, I do recommend this. If anything about this book sounds interesting to you, please give it a try. Let me know what you think of it. But also, when you're looking at books or thinking about what genre a book is in, I think it's really important to question your own assumptions about that genre and ask yourself if you're rejecting an entire group of books because they fall into a certain category, or if that book really just doesn't sound interesting to you, which is also valid. Like, I'll be honest, I don't read a lot of romance because romance books just don't appeal to me in general, but that doesn't mean I won't read a book with a romantic plot line or even with a romance at the center of the plot line. Again, that's something I have a mental image, an assumption about what that genre is. I know a lot of people don't want to read science fiction because they have a mental image of some sort of like Star Trek style hard sci-fi, when honestly, some of it's like that, of course, but some of it's not at all. I guess what I'm trying to say is we all have an opportunity, myself included, to examine our own biases and our own assumptions about what will be within a book, based on either what the cover looks like, how it's marketed, or what genre it falls into, or even what genre the author falls into, because not all authors stick with one genre when they are writing. Have you read Second Chance by Jane Green, or anything by Jane Green for that matter? This is my first Jane Green, and I don't think it'll be my last. But let me know if you have read that or any of her other books, what you thought of them, and either way, I will see you in the next one. That's a really shiny, look at such a shiny cover. to